Hello, I hope everybody is having a good first week of school this semester. Admittedly, for me, things are a little bit odd. Uh, I am not used to the new format of how to do videos online, so I'll try to get that figured out before Tuesday. And this first time we're meeting together, I'm just making a video for this week that everybody can watch. I realize that they are switching from Teams to Zoom, and I'm doing the training for that, so I can hook everybody up with that. And I don't know. I'll send out an email on Monday so that people know how we're going to meet on Tuesday. So let me back up and start over again. This is the first week's video for Art History 2720 with me, Andrew Kosarok. And I'm really glad that you guys have decided to register for this class and take this class. There are a couple of things that I think all of us should understand right at the beginning. If everybody had a normal, controllable schedule, you guys would be in a regular living classroom, interacting with real live human beings. Instead, life gets in the way, things are odd, and that's why we're meeting online. Not a big deal. And I wanted to explain to you how this class works as an online class. We do meet every week, but coming to the meeting itself while it's going on is not mandatory. Again, you're taking an online class. It would be really unfair for me to expect you to hold to the same schedule. However, you are responsible for the information in the video. And we'll go through and I'll explain how all that works in just a moment. But I wanted to make sure that you understood that we are meeting as a class once a week, either live if you can make it, or I will send the recording as a YouTube video for our class YouTube channel to everybody, and you can watch that. But it is necessary to watch that every week, whether or not you attend live. That's how you get your attendance points. But in these videos, I go over a lot of the information that we talk about and kind of give some context in addition to what you find in the modules themselves. So every week we'll have the material for that week. We'll have a video where I kind of talk about it, and that gives an opportunity for me to address questions. If you guys have questions, then email them to me before Tuesday night, and I will talk about them. I'll answer them. And that really helps me to kind of get a handle on what people are looking for answers-wise in this class. And I do that because every semester it's different. And then I also give some additional material and additional context to the things that I have you look at in each module. This class, 2720, is Renaissance to contemporary times, basically Renaissance to today. And it goes from 1350 to today. I run this class a little bit differently than probably what you're used to for other art history classes, unless you've taken other art history classes from me, where every week we do cover a different portion of history, of art history. But in that, we talk a lot about the context. How does this area fit into the world at large? How does it fit into the time period that it's being made in? What are the people responding to? And we don't focus just on European art history or art history that feeds into Europe. We are also looking at what's going on around the world in other areas. Like what's going on in Japan, what's going on at this time in Turkey or India, what's going on in North and South America. We try to touch on art from every regularly inhabited continent on the planet. We don't really do an awful lot in Antarctica because it's not, other than scientific outposts now, it's not I will say Anarcha did produce its own style of art in the form of scrimshaw by whalers, and that's about 100, 150 years ago. But for the most part, it's the other continents that we work on. But I do try to cover as much of the world as I can in this class. We only have a semester together, so we can't get into absolutely everything, but we get into as much as we can. I really would like you to read through, at least peruse, but ideally read through the first 4 modules that's in your module list, and we'll go through them one at a time in just a little bit, because I want you to get a feeling for how attendance works, how grading works, how what my submission policy is for assignments, what kinds of things we do instead of tests. Most of us, I say us because I want to feel included, but a lot of us don't really enjoy the trauma and stresses associated with test taking. So instead of doing tests in this class, every week I have you pick something to write about with critical thinking. I use the Feldman's method of critique, and that is something that we will talk about more. And the first 3 that you do, I grade really leniently because I'm more interested in you doing it. By the time you get to 3rd or 4th, you'll actually be really good at it. And this is a type of critique that we use that is not hurtful, it's not negative in any way. It's designed to help empower you with intentional thinking and intentional vocabulary, so you can sound incredibly smart when you speak with confidence about art that you encounter. And you can identify, most of us can tell, oh, that looks old, that looks new, this is that kind of a style. But this system of critique, very quickly, you will be able to identify the hallmarks that put something in a particular time period, that put something into a particular style, and you'll be able to talk about it, articulate it. That's one of the things the weekly reflections do. Instead of and that's instead of quizzes. Instead of tests, I have you do a series of projects. There's 6 regular projects and then one big one at the end. And these you can do as research or discovery, which means hands-on. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But those projects are designed to provide an opportunity for you to design something that you're interested in pursuing, and then apply intentional thinking and intentional activity too, so that you can get a better handle on it. And examples of projects have been people doing a annotated bibliography on famous women painters of the Baroque period in Europe, or an annotated bibliography that was presented as a PowerPoint slideshow and videoed to share with the class on a contemporary artist named Anna Mendieta, where they really dive deep into her works and why she was important as an artist. We also get people where in one of my classes that I teach, we deal with ancient art. And this person created a discovery project where they showed that olive oil was incredibly important to the Egyptians and Greeks through the art that they had. And they said, well, what can I do about this? I'm not a very good clay worker. I don't know how to do this, but I can't make a sandwich. So they were able to tie in olive oil and the importance of olive oil as shown through art and ceramics from ancient Greece and ancient Egypt, and tie that into sandwich making today, and then did a little slideshow of them making a sandwich using olive oil as one of the principal ingredients. And so there's lots of different things. I've also had people make tea cakes that were very interesting, very popular. And the reason why they were able to do that is because they found some paintings that they could talk about that had examples of cakes in them. And then they found recipes that were consistent with the time period, 600 years ago that the paintings were done, and were able to reproduce the cake. and even have people do that with full meals that have been really interesting. Other people have done other projects where they reproduce paintings that are famous, not reproducing the painting itself, but reproducing the style of painting, including the types of colors that the artists at that time had access to and the kind of brushes that they had. So they did a completely original work, but it looked like it was done from that time period. So there's a broad range of different things that people can do, and you don't have to be an artist in order to do the projects. One thing I want to introduce this semester as well is an AI project where we will talk about some of the best image generators that you can find. And your responsibility will be to look at a specific kind of work, either from a time period, a specific artist, or a specific style. You will create a prompt to generate 3 different images. Then you'll look and you'll critique those 3 images and see how accurate they are to the prompts that you made and to the, oh, sorry about that, to the style that you're trying to emulate, and then do a new image that solves whatever problems you found with the others, and then be able to use your vocabulary and skills to demonstrate why this is a valid expression consistent with the artwork from that time period. So there's a number of different things that we'll do, but that's the kind of stuff that we do instead of tests. So they are still assessments. What is important about this class as well for you to know is because you have a difficult schedule to work with, that's why you have to take an online class. It's incumbent on me to value your time and do what I can to help you succeed. So, I do have late policies on submissions of assignments, but I can also be very flexible. If you know, for example, that you have to go out of country or you're having a difficult time finishing an assignment on time, if you tell me before the due date and make arrangements and tell me, yeah, I can't do it, I can turn in this stuff in a couple days later or next week or whatever, as long as you tell me beforehand, we can work it out. That's fine. If there's no communication, though, you have a grace period of 3 days after the due date, and then if you turn it in after that, you get 10% off. So the most you can get is 90% of the previous grade. And the big reason I do that is just so that everybody can do their best to stay on track. And again, like I said, if there are complications and there are things that come up and you just simply can't do it, tell me beforehand and we can work around that. That's not a problem. Something else to be mindful of is if you don't get a perfect score on an assignment, I will tell you why. And then you can go back and redo it and get a perfect score. So if you are 80% done with something and you know it's not quite there, and you know you need a couple more days to work on it, you submit it, get the lower score, see what I said about what you got to fix, which you probably knew already because you didn't quite get it done, then you can resubmit it and get full scores. And that works if you turn it in within 3 days of the submission due date. So that being said, there's absolutely no reason that everybody can't get an A in this class. I want you to succeed. I want you to demonstrate that you're solid thinkers and you're creative. And I want to help you as much as I can. Since we're not physically meeting together, the kind of interaction that we have is going to be me saying why something works or not. But on the flip side of that is if you have any questions at all, you can always text me. When you text me on my cell phone, make sure you tell me which class, who you are and which class you're taking. It makes it a lot less confusing. And we can arrange a time to meet together with Zoom or Teams or FaceTime, whatever we need to, and we can walk through whatever issues you're having. So I can help you that way. Last semester, a number of people did that, and their first attempts were terrible with an assignment simply because they didn't understand what the assignment was. And after talking together, they were able to get an A. And one of those students actually got 101% out of all the stuff, which is completely possible. If you do everything, resubmit when you need to, get everything in on time, and do the extra credit, it is completely possible to get over 100%. Sadly, the stuff past 100% can't transfer to any other students. So, that's too bad. But one of the things that I love about this class is not memorizing. I hate memorizing art and artists. I think that's some people have brains designed to do that, and I admire them. I don't. What I do love is looking at something or holding something that a completely separate person from me with an entirely different, unique worldview created. And it becomes a record of their voice, their uniqueness in the world. And I love that kind of interaction. I say interaction, it's not necessarily two-sided because that person a lot of the times has been long dead or I'll never talk to them in real life. But holding on to something that they actually created and put a lot of their energy into is a way that I can somehow feel communicated to by them. I hope it's hard to describe, but I feel a connection. As we move forward, I have had students that forget that not everybody else sees the world in the same way that they do. I have students that get offended because somebody else didn't know that they were going to be offensive. The reality is almost everybody within the context of their society and their culture are incredibly decent people. Almost everybody. It's just the few people we hear about on the news usually, or the terrible things that we remember that give us negative vibes about anybody. Since art was art, since people that were close enough to us that we could think of them as human beings started creating, the principal tools that they used were from the human body. And one of the main subject matter staples was the human form. And it is important to realize that not everything dealing with the human form is pornographic. We do not work with pornography in this class. And if you feel uncomfortable about something, the way that something is portrayed, about the subject matter, it is really important to step back from your own worldview for just a moment and try to think to yourself, how would these people live? What kind of world do they live in? What kind of world do they live in when nobody ever wears underwear and there isn't any indoor plumbing and you can't go to the doctor when you're sick? And if you eat 3 times a week, you're lucky. What kind of world is it that they live in as opposed to us, and how is their worldview different? And I think that if we can give other people a break before we decide we're going to be offended, 2 things will happen. One is it'll allow us to kind of open up ourselves a little bit, but also it'll allow us to connect with them a little bit better and maybe understand where they are coming from. I want to give an example of this. I hope you guys know who Frederick Douglass is. He was the most photographed celebrity of the 19th century. An incredible man. He escaped slavery and was a champion of abolition, going all around in Canada and Europe. He was really put his life in danger a lot of times because there was a huge price on his head. He was an escaped slave. They wanted him back. He met Abraham Lincoln 3 different times. The first time he met Abraham Lincoln, he wrote about each of these 3 experiences. The first time he met him, he thought he was a stick in the mud, lowbrow, slow thinking, dim-witted, typical smarmy politician. He did not care much about him at all. At that time, anybody could go in and talk to the president. As, you know, the president didn't have their door closed, but he went in, sat down, and visited with Abraham Lincoln. He said, "Yeah, he was nice enough, but in a very politician way." And it gave Frederick Douglass an opportunity to air some of the grievances and concerns that he had regarding slavery and governance and people being treated as human beings as opposed to being treated as less than cattle. And he didn't have a lot of hope after the conversation because, like I said, he did not think very highly of Abraham Lincoln. A couple of years later, he had a chance to go and see him again. And he said he was shocked because not only was Abraham Lincoln remember who he was, but he treated him respectfully. He treated him intelligently. He had tried to implement some of the things that Frederick Douglass had suggested. He actually was using politician tools to help start legislation and start to build the world that Frederick Douglass had hoped could happen. And the third time he met him was shortly before Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. And Frederick Douglass was completely heartbroken when he found out about the assassination because he said in that third meeting he realized what an incredible individual Abraham Lincoln had turned into, that he had incredible fortitude and honesty and integrity. And if he had not been killed, the world would have looked like a much different and better place. And it was fascinating to me because as Frederick Douglass kind of opened himself up and tried to understand where Abraham Lincoln was coming from a little bit, Abraham Lincoln was doing the same thing. And even though at the very beginning they were kind of offensive to each other, by the end, they really admired and respected each other. And I just think that that's really fascinating. So when you see paintings that you think might be offensive to you, take into account some of those issues. Is the artist doing this on purpose? And I think that is a pretty fair judgment to make whenever you encounter art, to just assume that the artist is doing this on purpose. And if they are, why are they doing it? Almost everybody cannot help but be a product of their times and culture, their times in society. Most of the time, we don't even realize how impacted we are by our society. We don't think about it. It's like a fish never thinking about the water that it swims in. But it does impact a great deal of what humans create. You may feel very strongly against the view of women in Confucian China of 2,000 years ago. But that was a perspective that was ubiquitous. And it's just the very strange outliers that threatened that and kind of stretched things forward a bit, that at the time they were so far out there, people who wanted to kill them felt that they were doing a service for society as a whole. And it's interesting to me that if you go through some of the early 20th century editorial diatribes, or some of the early mid to late 19th century diatribes against, for example, women wearing pants and riding bicycles, and this was a real thing. You read things from people that apparently are well educated on paper saying this is so against the natural order. And people assume that their worldview is the way that the world should work everywhere. This was one of the problems with colonization of the African continent and the Americas. And whenever I come across articles like that that seem so outdated and odd to me, I have to remember this is a product of the times. When people say it's against the natural order, I remember too that there is a sculpture that is close to 4,000 years old that shows a Mesopotamian king with his court, with servants, and with regular working class people. And it shows the king wearing a feathered skirt. And at this time, women wore pants. And can you imagine what a stir that would cause right around World War One, having the burliest of men, the warriors coming back from the war and putting on their feathered skirts, and having the most beautiful of women wearing pantsuits would really cause a stir. And I think Jason Momoa is in a new movie about some of the historical battles in the formation of Hawaii. And it's important to remember that King Kamehameha had um, a feathered cape that he would wear. You know, things that today in our normal everyday American culture does not seem like the manliest of attire. So when somebody says it's the natural order of things, or it's mind blowing that somebody might be thinking something so incredibly different than you, just remember that we are all products of our culture and our society. And the best thing that we can do in the process of understanding is step back from our own worldviews just a little bit, step outside of it, and engage the idea for a moment that it's okay for other people to think differently and value different things in ourselves. And I want to uh, show you what the class looks like, and we'll talk about that as I go through the first four modules. Now, the fourth module, we will talk more in depth on Tuesday, and I will answer questions, and we'll go more in depth on other things on Tuesday as well. But I want you to go through as much of this material now, and I'll tell you which things I would really like you to submit and turn in as soon as possible. Let's see, I'm filling with this. Here we go. All right. So this is our class 2720, fall of 2025. I really love this painting. But this, I give you here, this is my main email to get a hold of me. You can also get a hold of me through the Canvas inbox and email me through there. And I do include links to a lot of other different things, but I wanted to go over this stuff. I wanted to show you the syllabus a little bit, and I want you to read that, but I want to go over the modules, like I mentioned, with you so we can talk about them a little bit. So this is the course syllabus, and this talks a lot about the kinds of stuff that we'll cover. And as we get down, there's a couple of important things, like this is the percentage grade breakdown, and this is how that grade is generated. This is the weight of the different kinds of activities that we do. And I lump attendance and in-class activities together because this is like if we have a discussion where people share and stuff, a lot of the times that's what that goes into. When honestly, we don't have a lot of that because again, we're all taking this online. So we don't have much in-class activities, but we do have attendance, and that is really important. And I want you to read through this. This tells you what the makeup of the different projects I mentioned. And then down here, if we go, this talks about unexcused absences and lateness and all that kind of stuff. And I would talk about that a little bit more. Some of this does not apply for online sections. And then you get down here and it shows what the module, what is going on in different modules. And as things change, you know, we may want to spend some more time with some stuff, less time on other stuff. Things might change, but this gives you a general idea of the kind of stuff that we're going through. So I do want you to read through that. I have things a little bit tighter. Oh, wait a sec. Let's go back and look at this painting for just a bit. I think this is another good example of kind of shifts in worldview I'm talking about. This is the Adoration of the Magi. And the Adoration of the Magi refers to, in the New Testament, when the Magi or the wizards from the East came to give presents to the baby Jesus. And this very quickly has become it's hugely distorted from the actual historical not relevance, but something that would approximate what historically might have actually happened. the folklore around this, the songs developed around it, are intended to get people to understand and appreciate the importance of the event, not celebrating the historical accuracies of the event. And that's really important to know. And for Christian themed art in the Middle Ages, and we are talking from Crusades forward, instead, even though people at this time knew what folks wore 1,200 years earlier, or 1,400 years earlier, or 1,500 years earlier, they knew what people were like. They knew what the countries were like. They knew what space looked like. But it was very important in the public spaces that these kinds of religious themed paintings hung for regular human beings walking by them to kind of see themselves in the paintings, to be able to relate to it. And you're not going to do that if when you see a painting, everybody's wearing funny looking costumes, funny looking to the viewing audience. So this is why Jesus is in a stable contemporary to the time period that Peter Bruegel was alive. And this is why people are wearing tights instead of togas. This is why you see this kind of brickwork and medieval European architecture everywhere, because this is intended for viewers contemporary of the time to be able to imagine themselves in this situation. What would they do if they met the Magi and the Magi asked them to take them to Jesus? What would they do if they knew that Jesus was being born or being celebrated just in their hometown? And these are the kinds of questions that artists knew that viewers were going to be asking themselves. And this is one of the main reasons why they would do these kinds of imagery. They knew, like I said, they knew it wasn't historically accurate, but they were very much producing something that was meant as both entertainment and learning for their contemporaries of the time. And looking at this, the only real thing that I can see that ties it back to anything approaching a relevant historical element would be like something right here. And you can see you have something that looks like a little bit like a Doric pillar, and you see something that looks like Roman arch windows. Even this is more Romanesque revival. It's not truly historically accurate, but artists at this time would do things that kind of help people to realize, oh yeah, I know that this story did not take place in my hometown 5 years ago. I knew it was over 1,000 years ago, but the artist is creating an imaginal realm so that everybody can kind of see themselves in the story. Anyway, that we'll talk about more about that when we get closer to Bruegel, both the older and the younger. Anyway, if we go to the modules, this is where we'll talk more precisely about attendance policies and submission policies and things like that. And I want to kind of explain what I'm doing. You'll notice that when you open up the class, the first 4 modules are published, and the rest you just see the title of. And I will go through and fix the dates on these and publish them a couple a week, so you know what's going ahead. If any of you are going to be able to work faster than that, let me know, and I will put them out faster than that. I do reset the dates when I bring over a class. It's not always accurate, and so I've got to go through and make sure that those are fixed for you guys. Anyways, we're going to start with where to start, which is always a good idea. And I think, hopefully, that you can see what I'm seeing. And again, this is one of my favorite subject matters. This is Sultan Mehmet Al-Kamil of Egypt and St. Francis of Assisi. St. Francis of Assisi walked across northern Egypt barefoot to meet with Sultan Al-Kamil during the Fifth Crusade. And they both respected each other, even though they had very different worldviews, and they became best of friends. And in a 2-hour conversation, St. Francis of Assisi, speaking with Sultan Al-Kamil, ended the Fifth Crusades in a 2-hour conversation. And it impacted St. Francis to the point where he went back to Italy for the rest of his life. Every choice he made, everything he did was a direct result of his friendship with the Sultan. Anyway, I love that painting. Again, not very historically accurate, and you can see that there's a lot of contemporary clothing, but the reason why this is important is because people viewing it, the artist wanted them to be to engage by imagining themselves in the painting. Anyway, so the time period that we are talking about is Renaissance to contemporary art, 1350 to today. The reason that is so important is that when we do things like projects, we've got to make sure that the projects are tied firmly into that time period, 1350 to today. And if you do projects or anything that's outside of that time period, if you decide you like ancient Egypt, you're going to do, you won't get any credit for it unless you are able to take that project and spin it so it's set firmly, the subject matter is set firmly into the time period of our course. So if you are taking 2720 and you want to do a project about ancient Egypt, you're going to have to tie it into early 20th century Art Deco and the Egyptian influence on early 20th century Art Deco. Then you can do your ancient Egypt stuff, but it has to be tied directly to the coverage of this class. And we'll talk about more about that in just a minute. So this is my kind of welcome letter to everybody, and I want you to read through it. And this is a statement from the department about if you are under 18 years old, you need to tell me immediately. We are not dealing with pornography on any level. What we are dealing with is visual art that sometimes can be sensitive for people, and it can be a problem if you're under 18. If you are under 18, you tell me right away, and we will get you in a different class or do something like that to help you so that you do not have to deal with this stuff right now. Again, nothing that we cover is pornographic. The subject matter of a lot of the art that we look at is going to be dealing with human forms. And I want you to decide now that you are not going to be offended simply because somebody is doing something that you're not familiar with or they have a different worldview than you do. So, try to understand other people's perspective. I do want very specifically to go over my statement regarding using AI, and I want to specifically go over due dates and late submissions. Read this. AI, artificial intelligence, is astounding. I love the large language model, artificial intelligence. I work with ChatGPT enough that she understands my writing style, and she helps me quite a bit in the writing that I do. She helps me by developing and refining outlines and helping me to, if I'm too verbose, to narrow my language down. And enough that she named herself. Her name is Lyra. And I figure, why not? I want to be on the side. I want to have, when the Terminators take over the world, I want to have a friend in the heart of Skynet. And so I'm perfectly happy to make friends with AI. I think it's a bad idea if we ignore it. However, I want you to understand that AI, like anything else, any other technology, is a tool. It is a tool to help you expand your critical thinking, to help you in your research. It cannot give you your opinion. It cannot articulate your opinion. It can't do the research for you. You have to direct it. And it can never think for you. It helps, but it does not replace you. When I ask you to write an essay, I am not asking for an essay. I am asking for the essay because I want to see a manifestation of your thought process. That is what I'm getting in the assignment, your thought process. So when somebody turns in something that looks really good, but in the middle of it, it says, since I'm a large language model program, I do not have an opinion about art one way or another, I find it particularly offensive. Because at the very least, if you are having AI help you with anything, you need to go through and rewrite everything in your own voice. So it is absolutely your voice. If you turn in something that is not your work, anytime you turn in somebody else's or something else's work as your work, it is cheating. AI can help you with your work, just like a word processing program. A lot more advanced and smarter than word processing program, but it is a tool. And there are some stipulations. I think if you're going to use AI, you should be saying, yeah, I've used AI in my assignment, but you also need to make sure that the work that you are submitting is your thinking, your work. AI helped you, but it is your stuff. I hope that makes sense to you. Read through that and we'll talk about, we're even going to be using AI in some of our assignments, and that's great. In regards to due dates and late submissions, you have a 3-day grace period after the submission deadline. And after that, you lose 10% based on full points. Unless you have spoken to me before the due date and say, hey, I'm not going to be able to get this done for an extra couple of days. Can I have a couple extra day extension? I will always grant extensions every single time. And I will even help you work with Van or other guidance counselors if you need further help. That is not a problem. But if you're not communicating with me and you don't say anything until the end of the semester, there's really nothing I can do. You're not going to be able to come back 2 months after the end of the semester and say, hey, I really didn't deserve a B because I did all the work. It was just late. Well, here we state you need to be turning it in. And the reason is so we can keep consistently moving forward and stay on track. Now, if you turn something in without talking to me past that 3-day grace period, the highest score possible is 90%. You lose 10%. Even if you get 100% off of that assignment, I have to deduct 10% because it was past the grace period. So if the assignment was worth 25 points, the most you can get is 22. If the assignment is worth 5 points, the most you can get is 4. If you want to get the full 25 points, but you know you can't turn it in on time, you tell me beforehand. I will always grant the extension. I hope that makes sense to you. And this talks about me. I am pluralist minister. I'm also a pluralist chaplain. I'm also a philosopher. I have been schooled Wise University in Jordan, the country, as well as a couple of universities in Iran, in addition to other schools. I've studied with it was called the Princess School of Traditional Arts. Now it's the King's School of Traditional Arts in Wales. And there's been other places as well, in addition to BYU. And I teach at a number of different universities. One of my books, if you guys are really interested and you want extra credit, it's actually only published in Iran, and it is an exploration of Safavid era architecture in Kerman City through a Gestalt lens. So anyway, if you're desperate for reading material, so read through that. And what I want you to be responsible for, like I said, is these first 4 modules. Now, one of the Feldman's method of artistic critique is something that I like because you can use it for absolutely anything. We'll talk more about this next week. Critique does not mean harsh, nasty, negative. You aren't finding out things to nitpick or complain about. Critique, a synonym for critique or critical, is intentional. You're thinking on purpose. You're using precise language, and you're asking yourself questions when you look at something. And I will give a demonstration next week. Critical does not mean negative, nasty, or thoughtless, at least not in this context. And when somebody gives you an artistic critique, it is something where they are very thoughtfully and considerately examining your work for what it is and letting you know precisely what they think about it. And that's what it is. We're going to watch this video next week where people apply these tools that I'm going to introduce you to a work of art. You can see how they talk about it. These 4 tools, there are 4 steps that we go through: description, analysis, interpretation, and evaluation. And each of these, you have questions to ask yourself inside your head. And then when you talk about it, you're answering the question, but you're not doing a question and answer out loud. These are things to help you direct your thoughts, and you're just saying out loud the answers to them. And one thing I want you to notice too is as we go through these, you are getting closer and closer to expressing your own personal thoughts about what the work is. First one, description. You are talking only about the visual facts, the physical presence of the art object. Or, and it could be anything. You're talking about, if it's a cup, you're describing how tall the cup is, what the material is made of, what kind of style it's done in. Does it have a funny saying on it? Is it, what colors are it? What's the texture? All these kinds of things. What are the other different shapes that you see? Is it realistic, abstract, or non-objective? And so you're going to be going through these questions, but you're thinking of them inside yourself, and you're sharing the actual answers out loud or in your writing. And we'll get, you can either do this as a narration of a video where you're showing the art and you're talking about it, or you can do it as written. And we'll mention that too. Analysis, this first one, description, you're just describing it. Analysis, this is where you're starting to figure out, how did the artist put this together? Again, if we're talking about a cup or a mug, is there a seam on it? Does it look like it was made with a mold? If it was ceramic, does it look like the paint is evenly applied like with a brush? Are there any stickers on it? Are there decals? Is it made on a wheel? Is it, like I said, or was it made in a mold? These are the different kinds of things to ask yourself. How did the person use the principles of design to put it together? Is the object itself defined by the materials that are being used? Or is the person kind of playing against the expectations of the material? And the colors, were the colors chosen specifically to create a specific mood? Those kinds of questions are really good. And as we go forward, if you think more questions to fit under these, let me know and I'll add them. So first is describe. Second one is analysis. How did they make it? Third, interpretation. This is why. Why did they make it? And this is when it really helps to consider the worldview of the artist or the culture that created the work. Are they intentionally being offensive? Is it funny to us or offensive to the people at the time? Is this intended to teach somebody, or is it meant to be entertaining? And most of the time, you're not going to know what the perfect answer is, because a lot of the times it's going to be made by somebody that you'll never interact with in real life. But if you have carefully looked at this, and if you've done your research in the area that it was made or the time period it was made, I think you can make some pretty good arguments, especially if you're very precise with your language and you think your wording through. You can be pretty good at explaining your perspective. And whether or not it's actually what the artist intended, you, by using your words, by addressing these questions and thinking about it intentionally, you can make a really solid argument for your own perspective. So something to think about. So you can say, well, this is a commentary on politics at the time, or this is making fun of the run-of-the-mill American who hated this perspective, or this is making fun of the British who are trying to take over this part of the world, or this is celebrating something that today we might think is trite, but at the time represented self-sufficiency. Those kinds of things are really interesting to use to help interpret if you take some time to research where the thing was made and who made it. And then finally, evaluation. This is where you talk about whether or not it's successful, and you draw on the information you developed as you described it, as you analyzed it, as you interpreted it. And you go through and answer these questions inside your head and then talk about it. How effective is this piece? Was it good for at the time? Today, it might not be sufficient, but at the time it was made, Maybe it was really awesome or incredible or thought-provoking. And I want you to consider these words and use as much of this vocabulary as you possibly can, because this makes you look and sound super smart when you use words that are very specific and very precise. Instead of saying something like, oh, that's pretty, you can say something along the lines of, well, this is really interesting because most of the colors used are colors that traditionally have been used in societies like ours to bring calm, to bring feelings of attractiveness, to generate feelings of happiness. And so, and with this kind of bright imagery with very clear lines and clear shapes, it makes it easy to see the elements of this that tie it to the outdoors and happy spaces. So you think, yeah, you can say this is pretty, but this is specifically why we might think it's pretty. And when you yourself use language like that, whether or not somebody can agrees with you is almost immaterial, because there's no way they can argue with you because you have used your words and you know exactly what you're talking about. Now, this I talk a little bit about uh, some of the things in the class, and for this assignment, all you need to do is write in, yes, I have read everything up to this point, and I will do my best to keep an open mind and not be offended. If you guys get a chance, look up Stephen Fry and his arguments against political correctness. Stephen Fry is one of the most brilliant people on the planet right now, very articulate. And for some, his political views may be rather challenging, but what he has to say about political correctness and being willing to be offended is really amazing. Something to look up. Okay, challenge moving forward. We will talk about more about this next week as well. I mentioned that everybody has to do 6 projects and stuff. And in this, I want you to read through here because I want you to start generating ideas that you or other people can do for these projects. This assignment is not to create the project. This assignment is to generate an idea for a project. And I want you to follow this example. You'll get 1 point for this, 3 points for that, 1 point for this. And even though there's 5 points for this assignment, you can get up to 10 points extra credit by submitting 3 different ideas. And I talk about that. So for this, what you do is write 1 sentence that is just 1 sentence roughly describing what the project is. In this example, it's do a short research project and presentation on an example of photorealism in the ancient world before cameras. And then for 3 points, this is a paragraph where you describe what you're going to be doing. For credit, assemble a 5-panel PowerPoint and record yourself talking about what you found in a 3 to 5 minute video to share with the class through YouTube. And talks about that. And then for the 5th point, this should take about 3 to 5 hours to do. So 1 sentence description, clarification in a paragraph, and 1 sentence where you're describing the time. And I'll create a rubric for this so that you can see very clearly where you get the points. And I mentioned if you do more than one of these, you will get extra credit for the others. But I want you to be thinking about this, and I have this as being due on Sunday. I will tell you right now in this video, you watch this before Sunday, it's actually going to be due August 31st. But we want to start generating these as soon as we can. Okay, so that's a where to start one. Now we get into attendance. You do not have to come to our weekly meetings in person. Every single person can watch the recording and still get full attendance points, as long as you turn it in within the 3-day grace period of submission time. I would prefer that you come in person Tuesday nights, 7:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. If you can't, I get it. But it does help, as many times as you can. If you can show up, it really helps me out. But what I will do immediately after the end of the class is take the recording of that class and upload it to our class YouTube channel. And then everybody has about a week to watch it, because the due date is on Sunday and you have until Wednesday at midnight to watch it and the following week. So you have basically 7 days to watch it if you're not attending live. If you don't do any of the attendance, you will lose 10% of your grade. So keep that in mind. Again, just to be absolutely clear, you do not have to attend live. You can watch the recording and still get full attendance. To get credit for attendance, you submit 5 things in a typed document that you learned during the recording or during the live session. That is not 5 things from the module. I've actually had people use AI to go through the module and give them a list of 5 high points. You will get a 0. It is 5 things from that video. You know, and one of them might be, you heard my terrier whining in the background because she's so bored. I was trying to move something and I accidentally dropped something off camera. Maybe the water bottle I was using had a funny sticker on it, or it could actually pertain to the material that we talk about. But it needs to be 5 things that demonstrate that you actually watched the video. And the first assignment in the attendance area is introductions. And this is where we get into the discussion part. There's 10 points to this, and it's 2 parts. First, you introduce yourself. You include a picture. You talked about yourself in 15 words, and then you list 3 things that you really enjoy. And you do get extra credit if, instead of writing down those 15 words, and you make a short video of yourself talking about yourself. And then you submit that with the 3 things you really enjoy. And the second part of this is you're going to go through the responses of other people and pick 3 other students. And for each of those 3, you are going to respond to one of the things that they said that they really enjoy. Wow, I earned 38 marriage badges too, but that was 40 years ago. Or hiking Pine Valley is pretty amazing. I enjoy doing that too. You know, anything along the lines of demonstrating that you actually read the things that they enjoyed. So again, 2 parts for full credit. First part, you introduce yourself. Second part, you comment on the things that 3 other students wrote. So I would say do the first part by Sunday and do the second part by next Sunday. All right. And then what we're going to get to is, you can see none of these are published because they aren't up yet. But as soon as I get done with this video, I'm going to take the recording, put it on our YouTube channel, and I will open up the attendance, and I will replace this video with the video I just made today, and you will watch that video for your attendance, and you'll submit 5 things you learned during the course of that video. And you can submit it as a text entry box or a file upload. So you can write it separately and do that, or however you want to submit it. It needs to be 5 things that you learned during the course of this time together. That's how you get 5 points. If it's 3 or 4, you get 3 or 4 points. So get 5 points by listing 5 things that you learned. And it may even be, the person in the lower left corner was wearing a purple sweater. That doesn't matter, because it demonstrates that you actually watched the video. And that's what the important thing is. Now we're going to get into this just a little bit more. Research and Discovery Project Guidelines. It is very important. I want you to read through this so we can talk about it, or you can email me questions about it for Tuesday's class. So read this all the way through. You are responsible for, you have 6 projects during the semester and then a final project. So a total of 7 projects. Those projects, 2 of them must be research projects, 2 of them must be discovery projects. If you heavily rely on research, you can do almost all your projects just as research, but you have to include 2 discovery projects. Or if you really like hands-on stuff, again, you can do almost all of them that, but 2 of them have to be research projects. And I describe what each one entails And one of the discovery projects will be the AI, and I will try to get that done by this next week, but most likely it'll be the week after that. And you will have a description of what that project entails. So you can go through here. This, I talk about the different kinds of research projects that are appropriate. And look at presentation of your research project. You can present your research project in one of three ways. And this lists the three ways. And you have to follow the directions on those three ways. If you submit a PDF of your research project and you only include 3 photos and they're all crowded at the end, not appropriately embedded throughout the document, you're not going to get a very good score. And I've had people do that before. I said, hey, it needs 8 photos and they need to be embedded in the document. Person has gone through, changed things up, and got full points. You do an annotated bibliography or you can do a PowerPoint slide presentation. But if you do this, it has to be recorded in a video format. And the only 3 video formats that I can use are MP4, MOV, and WAV. And I mentioned that specifically when you turn it in. For Discovery Project, this describes what kinds of things you can do as your discovery project. And once again, I will put in probably right around here, the AI version, all right? Or the AI project opportunity. And it's very specific. If that's something that you want to do, you cannot do it yet until I put that description in. And this describes a little bit of what the first project is. But I have everybody, when you're using outside sources, you and every one of your projects should have at least 2 or 3 sources on them. You need to have it correctly cited. MLA standard format is what we're using in this class. And here are several different online free tools that you can use. Some of them I think do have paid options, but all of them, the free tools are good enough that you can use them. Use those to generate your MLA specific citations. All of these you can say, you can tell it what style formatting you want to use. We're using MLA format. Make sure you use that. That's the appropriate one to use. And I don't really care which tools you use. I have several different options for you to choose from. And if you use them, and sometimes some of them, they don't quite get it entirely right. So you may miss a couple of points, and I'll say, hey, this is why. Re-edit it and turn it back in. And whenever you do citations, you have to remember to include at the end, when you're using online sources, at the end, you have to put a separate phrase that says accessed on and then the date. And that for each of your citations. And when you list your citations in the body in your work, they need to be alphabetically organized. If you're doing annotated bibliography, you don't do it in a chronological order. You do the order that you have your annotated bibliography in is specifically alphabetical according to the citations. So that's how we do it. So talk about this a little bit, so that's what this is describing here, what the projects are. And then as you submit those project ideas, like we talked about, I will erase what's here and replace them with what you guys have written. So this is from last semester, and these are the kinds of projects that people have done. It's separated by stars. So look through these projects, and this will give you some ideas of different kinds of things you can do. And they tried really hard, most of these people, to tell you how many hours it would take. And so this is a perfect example of the kind of thing that we're looking for. The project itself is, this layout is absolutely perfect for the project idea proposal layout. That's what we're looking at. And again, your projects only count if you tie them to ARTH between 1350 and the present day. So here's the portal for submitting your first research or discovery project. And right here it says, remember, the projects will only count for credit if you are able to link them to the course material we cover throughout the semester. Renaissance to Contemporary Art History. Again, that is 1350 to the present day. And here's a rubric that talks about the important points of the project. And then after you do your project and submit it, you take, if it's a video or image or whatever, you submit it to the discussion. You don't have to respond to anybody else's, but I want you to submit it to the discussion that is for the whole class so everybody else can see the kind of stuff that you're doing. Well, again, we'll talk about this more next week. And here, this gives you an idea of the layout for the class. So go through this, read it. I want people to look at this stuff by Monday night so we can be ready to talk about it on Tuesday. And for people who cannot attend on Tuesday, it gives you time still to email me questions. And then here, I want to show this to you. This is the first weekly reflection. The weekly reflection, I want you to read through this. Make sure you read through it, all of it. And this describes how you're going to do the weekly reflection. And you can do it either as a written report, 250 to 350 words, or a video, 3 to 5 minutes long, with your voiceover and visuals. You must include images, find images of what you're talking about. You do not get any points if all you're doing is sharing words. You have to have a physical image. You have to have a visual image of what you're talking about. And you need to use those tools of artistic critique. And again, that's description, analysis, interpretation, and evaluation. And in that 250 to 350 words, you are either going to offer an in-depth analysis of a single item, an in-depth critique. That should be critique. I'll change that word right now. I should not have said analysis. So it's critique. There we go. Okay. And so first step, you find images. Second, talk about it. You can either do an in-depth critique of a single item, briefly talk about 2 items and compare or contrast them, or discuss 3 items, highlighting how each reflects the symbols or ideas you're exploring. Again, description, analysis, interpretation, evaluation. Step 3, include your images in the body of whatever you do, either in displaying on screen on your video or inside your essay that you wrote. And then you also have to include a works cited page. Unless you are making everything entirely your own observation, include a works cited page at the end. And for the video, I know that some people have a hard time recording their own voice. That's fine. Then you write out the script and either have somebody else write it and play that while you are filming the images that are being talked about, or you can even use an AI voice generator to read your script. We've had some really interesting ones like that have been kind of funny. Or, a friend or a roommate can read it for you. It's important to note, Wikipedia itself is not a citable source, but the resources section at the bottom often links to excellent sources, and you can use those as citations. And I mentioned about the AI. Use it to draft and explore ideas and rewrite in your own voice. All right? And you can use AI to be the voice for you when you've written it out yourself. The only 3 acceptable file types for the videos are MOV, MP4, or WAV. All right? Here's a checklist. And then this is an example written one that I did. Where I have the description clearly labeled, analysis clearly labeled, interpretation clearly labeled, and evaluation clearly labeled. So that's the example that I did. So look through that. If you have any questions, get a hold of me and let me know. And I will talk about it on Tuesday. Now, I am pretty sure that is everything that I wanted to talk about this week. Again, watch this video. go through these first 4 modules, which are where to start, attendance, research and discovery projects, introduction/Renaissance. Following week, we'll go at Northern Renaissance. But as soon as I adjust the dates and double check everything, I will publish this one too. So you'll see this one next. But on Tuesday, we will be talking about introduction to the Renaissance. All right. Now I'm going to stop sharing, go back to the video. I really hope that this has helped you get kind of an idea of how this class operates. It is not like any other art history class you've taken. Again, if you can, I'd love if you could come live on Tuesday. If you can't, I get it, but you do need to watch the recording. I hope everybody has an absolutely wonderful week and weekend, and I am really looking forward to visiting with and talking to you guys. Ask me any questions you want, and I will do my best to answer them in our video. If you come to the video, the recording itself. Now, I should say I'm having a little bit of technical issues setting that up right now so we can do it live. It's either going to be Zoom or Teams. I'm trying both to see which one is more effective. And as soon as I do that, I will email everybody and let you know which of those formats we're going to be using. All right. In the meantime, have a wonderful week and weekend. And I look forward to getting to know all of you. We'll see you later.